Start out a few weeks ago. My family and I went to Minnesota to give Matthias away. He got married and he's living up in Minnesota, and he's doing pretty good, I think. I haven't talked to him yet. I didn't want to bother him. I didn't want to have that, father worry. They didn't want him to think that I was worried about him, which I am, but I want him to just find his way, right? So this song reminded me of the advice that I was giving him before he was leaving, is that to remember that your feet are on the rock, that as long as you know who you're standing with and your cornerstone, then all the other issues that you may have are just issues that you have to overcome, right? So I wanted to, so I have something, see, so I have this, it's not a gun. I should move slowly, right? Let me move slowly. So I have this, do you guys know what this is? It's called a steel, right? It's a steel. What's it for? Sharpen knives. Who here thinks that this is to sharpen knives? I just heard several voices tell me that it's to sharpen knives. Now all of a sudden, who here thinks that it's to sharpen knives? I got 1, I got 2, I got 3, I got 4, 5. Okay, you're all wrong. This is not to sharpen a knife. This is called the steel. And what it does is it takes a knife that is sharpened already, moving slow. So it takes a knife that's sharp already, and what it does is, Brother Vince, I heard Brother Vince say it, it keeps the edge on that knife, right? It keeps the edge. Do you know that I have seen grown men and women cry because that knife doesn't keep that edge? And so, what do we really need to sharpen that? What do we really need to sharpen this?
Metal sharpens metal.
Metal sharpens metal. That is true. But what you really need to sharpen the knife is a rock. Right? It's a rock. You see, you can't sharpen this knife with this. All you can do is keep the edge on that. But with this, a stone, the stone is what makes that knife sharp. It gives it that nice edge so that you can fillet a fish, so that you can take and go around the vertebrae of whatever you got cooking. Takes it in half. You got your steak and you want to cut it in half, and this just slices it, right? But first you need that stone, right? You need to sharpen it. So what happens is that more often than not, when we're using the knife, we might hit a bone. And when you hit that bone, then this knife gets little nicks in them and then becomes dull. And what helps it so that you continue to use the knife is that you need the steel. And so you need that iron to sharpen that iron, to keep that edge going, right? Now, so basically what you do is you take the knife, sharpen it with a stone. And as things go on, you keep that edge, right? And this literally helps you to cut through the tomatoes. How many of you have tried to cut a tomato with a dull knife? You liars. There's no way you're going to cut a tomato with a dull knife. Oh, I did say try. Thank you. Which brings me to my next point, or actually, I'm going to use that later, Brian. So, when you try to cut a tomato with a dull knife, it doesn't work. You can't even cut a piece of bread in half, right? So, as I said, I've seen grown men cry. When I worked at a slaughterhouse, it was very, very important that we keep our knives sharp. Because as the carcass of whatever we were working on comes, and you get one every 3 seconds, and that's not a lot of time. You think you think 3 to 5 seconds is a lot of time, but it's really not a lot of time. When you got something coming at you, and you have to cut it, and my job was to take the head of the cow literally completely off the body. And I had to do 2 at a time. And there was 2 of us working. So I did one, then he did one, then I did the next one, and then he did one. And so every other one we would do. And so it was very important that we kept these knives sharp so that we could fillet the through the neck. What you do is you cut, there's 4 bones in the there's 2 in the head and then 2 in the back that you have to cut through. I'm going to put that down so you guys don't get scared. All right. So imagine the cow is upside down with the head. The head is, and some of them are the heads are about this big and some of them are this big, and you have to prepare the head basically, and then you have to fillet through. And as you fillet through one side, you fillet through the other side, basically around this area. And then there's 4 bones that kind of look like this, okay? And there's a little bit of space in between them. And you have to take that knife and you have to kind of do this motion, up and down, and then you do the other side up and down. And so that separates those that separates the head from it, right? And you take the head and you put it on a hook, and then someone else does something else with it. Occasionally, we would hit that bone. And boy, when we hit that bone, it was rough. Because then the knife it took the edge off that knife. And so then we were struggling to put the edge back on, and putting the edge back on the knife, trying to get that steel to help us out, and here comes the other one, here comes the next one. And you're trying to, prepare the head like you're supposed to and separate it. And then here comes the next one, and you don't have enough time because you're like, okay, and then all of a sudden you start shaking and you start sweating, and then grown men start to cry because they can no longer cut through. They have to saw through, and it takes seconds to saw through, whereas it only takes one motion to cut through. But when you start doing this, and you start doing it one after another, and you're doing an hour of this, eventually you end up getting tired. And you start sweating. And you're like, what is going on? So then what we have to do is we have to take our knives, when you get a break, and you're praying, you're hoping, man, somebody hit that button. Somebody hit that button. And then the FDA inspector hits the button, and the line stops, and you're like, great. And then you run, you sharpen your knife on the rock, you come back, you put the edge back on it, and you're good to go, right? And if you don't know what you're doing, it can be very, very tiring, and it can be very painful. And eventually you end up getting what they call carpal tunnel. Then you end up hurting your elbows, your shoulders. I mean, there's a variety of things that can happen if you don't have the knife sharpened. And so where am I going with all this? I know you guys are looking at me like, okay, what's the deal? So here's the thing. In what relates to us, okay? I've been walking this walk with Yeshua, for 20, almost going on 21 years, right? And did you guys know that it's really not that easy to do? Did you guys know that?
Yes.
It is that easy for you? No, it's not, is it? I don't think it's an easy walk. It's a fulfilling walk, but it's not an easy walk, right? And that's one of the things that so Yeshua tells the disciples, follow me and I will make you disciples of men, right? And he kind of had to give them a little bit of sign of who he was. So he says, let's go out to the lake. And they're like, oh man, we've been out there all day. We haven't caught anything. Oh, let's just go out there and see what happens, right? So they say, okay, let's go out. Even though we know there's nothing, none of the fish are biting. So he takes them out there. They throw the net. Lo and behold, bam, they got a full net of fish, right? So he says, follow me, right? And as we read the scriptures, we understand that a lot of the disciples went through some harsh situations, right? They had not very happy endings. In fact, I believe there's some writings that say that Peter, when Peter was impaled, he requested to be impaled upside down because he felt that he wasn't deserving enough to be impaled like Yeshua the Savior had been. So he had requested to be impaled upside down. And so there's other accounts of the other disciples, having their lives ended in not so good circumstances. We know that Paul, suffered at the hands of the Romans. But here's what I'm trying to say, is that as I'm walking this walk, I realize that it's not an easy walk. It can be painful at times. It can be joyful at times. I've had my doubts. I've had my questions. But as I listened to this song, and I understood what it meant to have your feet on the rock, to stand with Yeshua, and still have issues come, okay? And still have things that happen. But the thing is that we have to remember that even when the rain comes, and I'm not going to dance for you, okay? Not this time. But even when the rain comes, we still have to dance, right? Even when the ground gets shaky, we still have to keep our faith. So in Matthew 14, and we'll read in verse 22, in Matthew 14, if you open up your scriptures.
Hi.
Matthew 14, it says, and this is a couple of things that, if you read the scripture, if you read this particular chapter, there's several things that Yeshua has already done prior to these verses, okay? But starting here in verse 22, it says, and this is, let's jump up here to verse 18. And this account is, of course, after the masses were fed by him, and this is what happens. This is the account of what happens. So in verse 22 it says, immediately Yeshua made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side. While he dismissed the crowd, after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land. Baffled by the waves because the winds was against it, during the fourth watch of the night, Yeshua went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. Is it a spirit, they said, and cried out in fear. But Yeshua immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Master, if it is you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the water, walked on the water, and came towards Yeshua. But when he saw the wind, and he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Master, save me!" Immediately Yeshua reached out to his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And so Yeshua takes him and puts him in the boat. This particular passage, I've always been fascinated by this particular passage. It fascinates me because Peter, who's a fisherman, who has lived most of his life in the water, and then walks on the water and starts to sink, and then becomes afraid. So it fascinates me because in my mind I'm thinking, dude, you're a fisherman. You've been walking in the water, through the water, to get into your boat so you can go fishing. And I'm sure, and on some occasions, even jumped out of that boat to go swimming, right? So you would only have to assume that he would know how to swim. It doesn't tell us that, but I would assume that he knows how to. I mean, he's been in water most of his life. Yet when this trouble came, he panicked and he started to sink and he started to cry out. So what's fascinating to me is that he is with Messiah. He's with Yeshua. And he still panicked and he started to sink. Because the winds started rocking back and forth. The waves got a little bigger. And so he has to yell out, "Save me!" We are in Yeshua. We are in Yeshua. Yeshua is with us. We went into the water, the old self went, and the new came out. And yet, when we recognize the fact that Yeshua is with us, that he is with us, and we are with him, right? We still get scared when the wind starts to wobble and wibble. We still get frightened when there's a little bit of situation in our lives. And we can take this scripture and we can relate it to our situation, whether it's sickness, whether it's financial, whether it's family. And then you start to say, wait a minute, you promised me a good life if I followed you. Did he not promise them to make fishers? I will make you fishers of men. Did he not promise that? Did he not promise you the kingdom in heaven? Made out of rubies, gold. In my house, in my Father's house, there are many mansions. He makes that promise to us, doesn't he? But yet when the wind starts to blow, or we get sick, or something happens in our lives, then we start to doubt and we start to sink. And we start going into the water. And that is when you're supposed to yell out for help. You should be yelling out for help. That is when we, as a family, as brothers in Messiah, as believers in the Father, Yahweh, that is when we have to sharpen each other. Iron sharpens iron. But I can't help you stay or keep the edge. I can't help you if I don't know that you need help. You can't help me if you don't know that I need help. Peter cried out, "Help me!" And immediately Yeshua grabbed him and took him out of the water. We cannot help each other if we don't know that we're hurting. Now, some of you guys have that gift. Some of you guys have that gift that you can see someone and you can say, yeah, that person's hurting. I think I'm going to go talk to him. I don't have that gift. But some of you guys know. Some of you guys have that gift. And it's those individuals that have to help us without that gift to stay sharp. So that we don't sink when the wind and the waters become agitated. We have to help each other out. Because if we don't sharpen each other, then we're going to go dull. And if when we go dull, that's not a good thing. It is not a good thing. Because when we go dull, then we lose our gift. Our gift of Yeshua. Something similar, well, let's take Mark's account into here. In Mark chapter 4, verse 35. This is Mark's account of what happened. In Mark chapter 4, verse 35. That day when evening came, he said to the disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There was also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, not a squirrel. And the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swept. Yeshua was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him up, said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" This dude, okay, so you understand? Yeshua is asleep with a pillow. When do you ever sleep with a pillow? If you're sleeping with a pillow, you're sleeping really good. You're dreaming, right? There is nothing that's bothering you. Are some of you guys light sleepers? You guys you sleep and you hear a little squeak and you're like, what's up? What's going on? Or you hear the door, somebody's open the door and you hear the door and you're like, what's up? What's going on? Are some of you guys like that? Yeah? I'm not. Look, my head hits the pillow and I'm out. I'm done. You can open the door, look, let me tell you how good I sleep, okay? At noon, when the sun is out, I can close my eyes and go to sleep. How many of you guys can do that? Yeah, just a few? I could do that thanks to my dad. My dad used to make us work out in the garage, and we would jack up the cars and put a piece of cardboard on the floor. In the summer times, the concrete was so cool that you're supposed to be working, and you're just like. And then he comes, "Hey, are you done with that?" "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're almost done." The whole time I was sleeping. But Yeshua is here, knocked out, resting his head on a pillow, not being bothered by anything. And his disciples, his people, his peeps, what's the little yellow things? On Despicable You? Minions. I don't like that song because it's not Despicable Me, it's Despicable You. So I always change the title to that song, or the movie. When the kids want to watch it, I always tell Aiden, "Let's watch Despicable You." He means, "You mean Despicable Me?" "Yeah, that's what I mean." So, here are the disciples in a boat with Yeshua. The storm comes in, it's rocking, it's moving up and down, right? And it's just one wave after another, right? and they're panicking. They have the Messiah with him. They have seen countless of miracles performed before them through him, and they have him, and they're worried, and they're panicking, and they go and disturb him. Master, teacher, rabbi, don't you care that we're going to perish? I could just imagine Yeshua going, oh, give me a second. All right, what's going on? Can you imagine that? The disciples are like, we don't understand you. Why are you not worried? Because look at outside, and he comes out and says, yo, slow down. That's all it takes. That's what he says. He goes, hey, enough. And the wind, the storm, everything stops. So when we are in that storm, all it takes is for us to say, yo, help us out here. And he helps you out. There's another story about this in Jonah. Let's go over to Jonah. See if I find it. I got this other. I said I left. So I go to Minnesota and had a wonderful time up there in Minnesota, and got to see Matthias get married to Savannah Holly. Nice wedding. Small wedding. And it was a nice time. And I took my Bible bag out of the car and left it in the house, and I told myself not to forget the bag. And I never should have told myself to forget the bag, because I forgot the bag. You ever do that? You ever do that to yourself? Like you tell yourself not to do something and then you end up doing it? You ever do that? Like, I can't forget to do this. Oh, I wrote a note too. It didn't work. And I put a string on my finger and that still didn't work. So, anyway, I had it earlier. Well, if I can't find it, I'll have to give you my version of it. Give me one more second here. Yeah, I wrote a note. I tied a string on my finger, and I still forgot it. So I called Matthias. Oh, I sent him a text. Said, I left my bag there. He goes, yeah, I know. And he said, here, I'll mail it to your dad. And I said, no, don't worry about it. I'll use another one. And I'm thinking right now that maybe he should have mailed it. Anyway. Oh, and I don't have my mistress with me either. The phone. Get it? I don't have my phone. Anyway, in the book of Jonah basically talks about this. Basically says that Jonah was in the boat and there's a storm, and then the people that are with him are all panicking and they're all praying to their deities and they're all saying, oh, this is going on, right? And Jonah happens to be sleeping. He's knocked out. He's not worried about it. And so they come down and they, stir him up and say, hey, dude, you got to pray to your great one, because we're about to die here. And so he, does the same thing as Yeshua, does a little stretch. Okay. Maybe a little jumping jacks. Maybe he does what we used to do. We had this exercise in the military. I'm sure Hector remembers it. This exercise was invented by a ex-special forces guy, and we had a very important colonel that came by and did an inspection, and so our captain wanted us to do exercise, and we're like, we're gonna make our platoon, we're gonna make our company look great. I want you guys to go and exercise. And so we're at the gym, and you guys got platoon number 1, first platoon, second platoon, third platoon, and then they picked a guy that was ex-special forces, right? They're like, you're the guy to lead us to this great exercise, right? And so they're like, what? Me? He goes, yeah. So, he's got these little patches that shows that he's been through all of this training, right? And so, so they're taking the colonel from one platoon to another to show all our exercises, right? And so they come to us, and then they have the sergeant in front of us, and he says, okay. He says, this is what we're going to do. He says, we're going to knock his socks out. We're going to knock his combat boots off, right? We're going to show him an exercise that he has never seen before. That is an elite exercise for only those individuals that are committed, that are willing to do it. Can I get a volunteer to help me out? Anybody? I still remember the exercise. Yeah? All right, I got a volunteer. All right, let's give it, Dale, right? Dale? All right, Dale. We're going to give Dale. So come up here, Dale. Now, don't worry, you're not going to throw anything. And so basically, you just do what I do, okay? So just stay right here. Stay right here. Right here. And I'm going to take my jacket off here. It's going to get hot. So, basically, so the exercise goes like this, okay? Put your hands up in the air like that, stretch, right? And then what we're going to do, we're going to bend down. You have to bend down because my back is messed up, so you do it. Right? There you go. So then what we're going to do, we're going to bend your knees down, all the way down, and then you're going to basically sit like this, and then you're going to lay down all the way back. All right. So go ahead and lay down all the way back. All right. Now you do what I do, okay? So, because this is you're going to sweat a lot. You're going to sweat. All right, so put your hands down, and you're going to say, in unison, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. I said in unison. Say it out loud. All right, now we got to start over. All right. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000, 6, 1,000, 7, 1,000. We got to do the 10. So, where was I? 6. Okay, 6, 1,000, 7, 1,000, 8, 1,000, 10, 1,000. Then you got to yell out, Sergeant! And this exercise is called the sponge. So you're soaking everything in. You just soak everything that's going around. Soak that in. Now, I know you're sweating a lot right now, but just work with me, so you just want to just really, then you start over. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000, 6, 1,000, 7, 1,000, 8, 1,000, 9, 1,000, 10, 1,000. Sergeant, right? And this is the sponge. And so that's what we did. That's what we did. All right, so thank you. He did good, didn't he? Didn't he do good? So that is called the sponge. And Hector and I love that exercise. In fact, we always wanted to do it. We requested that exercise every time we had to do exercise to impress a colonel. You should have seen what he said. I'm not going to tell you. It wasn't very nice. So anyway, so here is Jonah, relaxed, just sponging his dreams. He's dreaming. Yeshua's doing the same thing, and the storm is going crazy. His disciples, his followers, are just panicking. I can't believe you're not doing anything about this. You're sleeping. What's wrong with you? And he's just relaxing. right? Just soaking it in, enjoying it, right? And so, in Romans chapter 10, which, by the way, Dale, that is a trademark of the 3rd Platoon, 1644, so you can't go showing anybody, because that's a highly classified exercise, right? So you just can't go around. You're not going to make any money out of it. All right? In Romans chapter 10, verse 9, says, that if you confess with your mouth Yeshua is Master, and believe within your heart that Yahweh raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you confess and are saved. So, for those of us that have been immersed, we confess that. We confess it with our mouth that Yeshua is our Master, our Savior. And so, from that moment on, when we come out of the water, it's all peaches and cream, right? It's all good. No, it's not. So, there are different things that can happen in life, even as a believer, even after you've been immersed, okay? There are things that can happen. Sometimes we go through the storm because of disobedience. Sometimes we're doing something we're not supposed to be doing. But I'm talking about being in the storm when you're actually being obedient, when you're actually with Yeshua. I'm talking about having that storm just shake your world. And you have to remember who Yeshua is. We confessed it with our mouth that he is the Savior, that he is the Master, that he is the one that's going to take us, right? So the adversary likes to discourage us when we're going through trials, when we're going through certain things. Sometimes even we ourselves discourage those that are going through some stuff, not knowing that it's really not something that they're doing out of disobedience or they're doing something wrong. It's just that Yahweh is trying to sharpen them up. And so we have to understand the difference between the storm. We have to understand the difference of why we're in the storm. You have to recognize when you are being disobedient, you will be in the storm. But you also have to recognize that when you are with Yeshua, you are going to be in the storm, but it's a completely different thing. We have to have the mindset of the Meshach and Abednego in Daniel's chapter 3. Daniel's chapter 3, verse 16. We'll go over to verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So the story basically is this, right? King Nebuchadnezzar makes a declaration, and of course his little minions have to, because they dislike the three, they tell on them, and so King Nebuchadnezzar is upset, and because of the decree that he made, he now has to follow through, which is to throw them into the furnace, right? And this furnace is so hot that the people that are taking these three to throw them into the furnace are burned up. Did you guys get that? Okay, so somebody's taking you or somebody is talking bad about you, or somebody is doing something, I'll use myself as an example. So years ago, my old boss and I were in conflict. We were just constantly fighting each other, right? We were just constantly. She did something, and I did something. And then I did something, she did something. So we were constantly fighting each other, right? And I just had enough. And I realized, you know what? I got Yahweh on my side, right? And so I go to Yahweh, and I was telling Hector, I was complaining to Hector about her. I was telling Hector all about her, and I had Hector convinced that, yeah, she's the bad person. Yahweh has to do something about her. And so I'm talking to Yahweh, and I said, Yahweh, you need to fix that lady, and just fix her. And so then Yahweh says, first fix yourself, then I'll fix her. And I said, no. What? Wait, hold up, time out. Did you just say for me to fix myself? And I'm like, but I'm not the problem. She's the problem. Fix her so I can be good. And he says, no, fix yourself, then I will fix her. So then I was like, wait a minute. Okay, so then I fixed myself, and then guess what happened? Our relationship got better. Not 100%, but it got better. And the word is true, that once I fixed myself, then she became a completely different person. In fact, she is the one that told me about the position that I currently have now. And she really wanted me to go in her footsteps. So you see, here I am arguing with this individual, telling Yahweh to fix her when I'm the one that's the problem. And he tells me to fix myself, so I fix myself. And then Yahweh makes it work out so that I fall in line to the position that she had, that I currently have today. And but anyway, we can sit down and talk about that some time. And I'm really grateful. But here are these three individuals being taken to the furnace, and the guards that are taking them to the furnace get burnt up. And so here in chapter 16 it says, Shemrek, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, Yahweh, or the Elohim we serve, is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he doesn't, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your deities or worship the images of gold you have set up." So even if we're going through the trials, and even if we don't get immediate help, we still have to stay strong on that rock. We still have to plant our feet on that rock. We don't want to hit the rock. You don't want to hit the rock. You don't want to yell at the rock, but you want to talk to the rock and be firm. Because we know what happens when you strike the rock. It's not good. Just read what happened to Moses when he struck the rock. Instead of talking to the rock, he hits it, and Yahweh says, because of that, you will not see the kingdom. So we have to speak to Yeshua, the rock. We don't have to strike at him. We're already with him. He already has us. So we don't have to strike him. So we're with him. We just have to be able to say, okay, let's hold up a second. You see, the adversary, I'll see if you guys know this. I'll see if you guys know this little saying. See how good you guys are. So the adversary can huff and puff. Exactly. he can huff and puff and blow your house down, right? It's a house that belongs to this world. Let him huff and puff. Let him blow it down. That's not our kingdom. Our kingdom is in New Jerusalem. And trust me, what happened when he got to the last house that was made out of brick? He huffed and puffed, and what happened? Nothing happened. So the same thing. The adversary can huff and puff while we are serving Yeshua. But when we get to that house, and that house has many, many nations, in fact, you might end up getting lost in them, which would be a nice thing. You go to a corn maze, you get lost, but hey, if I go to my father's house and he has a corn maze, I don't mind getting lost there, because I'm in the New Jerusalem. Right? So he says, even if he doesn't deliver us, we will still serve him. That's the thing, is that we have to think that even if Yeshua doesn't get us through this particular situation, we're still going to serve him. We're still going to be dedicated to him. We're still going to look for him. We're still going to be planted our feet with him. Like the song that they sang, Hosiana, Hosiana, our fears be washed away. We got to rejoice over that, sisters and brothers. We got to rejoice. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 7. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 7. It says, Hebrews chapter 12, it says, endure hardship as disciplined. Yahweh is treating you as sons. For what son is not disciplined by his father? If you are not disciplined, then you are illegitimate children and not true sons. So we have to endure the hardships, whether they're good or bad, because we are his children. We're not someone else's children. We're his children. I want you to be like a sponge. Brother Bob, can you bring that up? As Brother Bob is bringing that up, I'm going to go to my last verse here. I want you guys to be like a sponge.
Down and run?
Yep. Don't worry, you're not going to get wet. Thank you. So, you guys know what this is? It's a sponge. No, not SpongeBob. Sorry, Bob, I didn't. Anyway, you guys know what this is? It's a sponge, right? It's a sponge, right? Look. Whoa. Can you get that back to me, Zach? Thank you. I'm able to throw it, and it flies because it's not wet, right? But I want you guys to be like a sponge. I want you guys to come to services willing to be wet, willing to soak what is given to you by the Father. Even if my words don't mean anything to you right now, or even if my words don't connect with you, there's something that's special about coming to the Sabbath services, about coming to services. There's something that's special for all of us, because as my wife Katie reminded me this past week, we're not here for ourselves. We're here for each other. And so what we need to do is be this sponge that can soak things in, and you are completely drenched in Yeshua's Spirit, and you just soak that in and bring it in to your heart, bring it into your mind, bring it into your spirit, whatever the case may be, whatever Yahweh has for you, whatever Yeshua has planned for you, even when you're in the storm, whether it's a bad storm or a good storm, just soak that in. Put yourself in the water, if you have to do it again, and just soak that in. Soak that Spirit of Yahweh into your core. Soak it into your heart, so that when the winds and the water in your boat starts to go one way to the other, and those waves start to become more enormous than you, and you think that they have the power to do something. They don't have the power to do anything. They have no power at all. They have no power over you. They have no power over me. But the one that does have the power is the one that we serve, because he is great and mighty. In Acts chapter 14, 22, Book of Acts chapter 14, verse 22, it says, We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of Yahweh. Let's go through the hardships together, brothers and sisters. Let's not let the adversary defeat us. Let's not let him win. Let's continue to walk so that we can enter the kingdom of Yahweh. May Yahweh bless you. Hallelujah.